Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Fiber of My Being podcast. I have a special guest with me today. This is one of our other cats. This is Mary. So I will just show her to you for a minute. She's a lovely little tuxedo, and she's really chatty. We just got her this new adorable rosy collar. So, if you hear any meowing or anything, it's her behind me begging me to pet her. So, as you can see, she's really not a nice cat at all. She hates people. Can you tell? So, I don't know if I already introduced myself or not. I know I introduced Mary. She'll probably be behind us here on the couch for a bit. But my name is Megan. I live in Pennsylvania with my husband Paul and our 3 cats. I introduced you to Mary this week, and I showed you our kitten Agatha last week, so I'll try and get the 3rd one on the podcast next week. They don't really get along yet. We're still working on integrating them because the kitten's new, so they're all in separate rooms. This little cuddle bug. Anyway, okay. Yeah, so now that I have done the cat portion, let me move on to a little bit about the podcast. So this is Fiber of My Being. It's a podcast about knitting, crochet, some spinning, other fiber-related stuff, whatever strikes my fancy. And you can find me on Ravelry as Fiber of My Being. You can find me on Instagram as Megan Tomkeel. And sorry, excuse me. And you can find me, or you can find the Ravelry group for this podcast on Ravelry as the Fiber of My Being podcast group. And on that group, I'm trying to open up some threads for discussion, so that if you're watching this, you can go over there and participate in some discussion of the of fiber and fiber-related things. I'm sorry if I'm a little crazy today. I'm filming this in a hurry, and I'll get to why when I get to my FOs. And it might be a little bit noisy today because they're doing construction outside our house. They've been doing it for months now. Also, this cat is sometimes noisy. And also, you might hear some doors opening and stuff at one point because my husband is out running right now. And so when he gets back, it's going to make some noise. So, I'm sorry for all the craziness. Like I said, I will explain why I'm filming in a hurry in the FO section. So, I think I covered everything. You can find me, I know I said already, you can find me on Instagram as Megan Tomkeel. And so go check out my Instagram if you're interested in seeing my finished knits, and also my adorable cats, and also lots of pets that are not mine, because I volunteer at an animal shelter every week, and I love to take pictures of the dogs and cats there and post them on Instagram. So if you want your dose of cute animals and knits, then check out my Instagram. And I'm going to be working on show notes. I know I haven't gotten up show notes for the last 2 weeks either. I'm still really new to this podcast thing, and I don't exactly know how show notes work. So I'm going to check out some other podcasters, see how they do things, and then I will try and get them up on the Ravelry page, on the Ravelry group. And I don't know if I said this before, but thanks to everyone who's watching this, whether you're a new viewer or a returning viewer, glad to have you. I'm looking forward to being part of this online knitting and fiber community. So thank you. So quickly, I'll move over now because Mary has decided to vacate the couch. My week in review quickly. I've been busy this week. I've had to be dealing with some grad school stuff. And then I think I mentioned in the first podcast, I'm doing a 40 book reading challenge list. And I'm almost done. And I've been reading a book for it. And I went to renew it from the library. And somebody requested it. So I can't renew it. So it's due tomorrow. So I've been speed reading this book. And I'm almost done. It's a really good book, by the way. But I've been speed reading it. So that's been taking some knitting time away from me. Because it's a pretty big book. So yeah, between grad school, reading that, and we're trying to work on integrating the cats, and when the new kitten's out, I don't get much knitting done because she loves to grab at anything that moves, especially yarn. So, and then it's been a really busy week at the shelter too. There have been a lot of animals and not a lot of volunteers, so I've been busy there. So I haven't gotten a ton of knitting time, but the good thing is I have not cast on anything new. Anyone who saw how many whips I have right now should be cheering for me because I resisted temptation and I didn't cast on anything new. And so I've just been working on whips this week and I actually got a few done. So I have a decent amount of FOs and a decent amount of progress, even after several setbacks this week. I'll tell you when I get to the projects that I had setbacks on. So to shorten the podcast this week, I'm going to only show the whips that I've worked on this week because I have a lot more whips, but I'm only going to show the whips that I've worked on this week in the whips portion, and that'll encourage me to work on more whips so that I can show them on the podcast. I will show a few other whips in a segment about my goals for the next week because I haven't worked on them this week, but I want to, so I'll show you those then, but I'm not going to be showing you all the whips. So this should hopefully be a bit shorter. So without further ado, I've got my notes here, sorry, they're kind of a crutch. So without further ado, let me get to the FOs. So, this was a half object last week. I think I showed you my first of the Paved Boot Cuffs by TinCan Knits. I just love these with the cable and the garter stitch. I've never done the braided cables before. I've done plenty of cables, but I've never done braided cables before, so I really like how this turned out. And then last week I had probably like this much done on the other one, but it wasn't quite finished. Well, shortly after I podcasted, I picked it up to knit again and realized that I had dropped a stitch in the cable pattern several rows back. And I'm pretty good at fixing mistakes usually without having to rip back or things like that. But with the cables, I'm still not very good at fixing cable mistakes. So I just decided that it was less effort and less headache to just frog the whole thing and start over. So that was a setback because I already had most of it. I had probably up to here done last week. And so I had to knit all of that again. And I was putting it off, but last night I went and just knit the whole thing. So now I have two. These haven't really been blocked yet, so the ribbing at the top and bottom kind of looks a little funky. But I wanted to show them to you, and I'm really excited. It's about boot season, so boot cuffs will be very nice. And these, I don't know if I said before, this is the Paved Boot Cuff by TinCan Knits. And I knit this in Woolease, Lion brand Woolease, 80% acrylic, 20% wool. This, I believe, is the Blue Mist colorway. I don't know if you can see, but there are like little flecks of almost blue, or like green and purple in this. It's really pretty. I'm glad that these are finally an FO. Next in the FO's list, this is a major victory for me. I had a breakthrough on my commission project, and now Santa has a beard. It looks a bit fluffy right now. I'm still trying to tame it a little. But this is the reason why... Ooh, yeah, definitely some fluff I gotta cut off. This is the reason why I'm filming this quickly this morning. Because the person who it's for needs it by this weekend when her family is visiting. So I need to send it in the mail today so that she can get it on time. So I'm still going to work on taming the fluff a little, but I finally figured out how I could do Santa's beard. So I'm super excited about that. What ended up working for me was I made semi-tassels. They weren't... I wrapped around a piece of junk mail, actually. Just a piece of folded junk mail. And then I cut them into strands, of course. And then I just tied a string several times around the middle portion, like you would do for a tassel. But then I didn't wrap around it, like partway down the tassel. I didn't wrap anything around it. I just tied it. So it's almost like a little mini pom-pom, more so. And I just did that, and then I tied them into the stocking here. And actually, if I showed you the inside, it would look pretty bad because I just realized that last night I didn't do anything with all the ends inside the stocking, so I've got to do that before I send it. But I sent pictures of this to the girl who commissioned it, and she was super excited. It's a present for her mom, and she said her mom's probably gonna cry. So, and if you can hear the jingling, it's because there's a jingle bell on the bottom. I waited to add that until the end because it would have been so annoying to work on this and hear that all the time. But I'm super happy that this worked out. I still have to shape his beard a little bit, I suppose. But I'm super happy that I finally figured out how to do this. And I added the little pom-pom. And for the pom-pom, I used my new pom-pom makers for the first time. And oh my gosh, I'm never making pom-poms any other way anymore because that was so easy. The maker was a little bit big for the pom-pom that I needed to make, but I just trimmed it down a lot, which actually made a neater pom-pom anyway. So, a little bit of yarn waste in that process, but right now I don't have a smaller pom-pom maker than that, so I just made do with what I had. Also, there's a ton of yarn waste from this beard, because that beard. So anyway, yeah, so I'm filming this quickly today because I need to send this in the mail today. So if it feels a little rushed, that's why. But I'm super happy that I finally have gotten this done. So, only a little more jingling. There we go. So that's my second FO. I've got a couple more. These are both tiny things. I think I showed this on the podcast last week. I think I showed both of these actually on the podcast last week, but they just needed some finishing touches, so they weren't really quite finished yet. So now I'll show them. This is my finished felted coin purse. It's a pattern by, I believe, I didn't actually write it down and I can't remember anymore, but I'm pretty sure it was a Lion brand pattern on their website. They had a bunch of these different felted coin purses, and I chose to go with this one because it had a few techniques I wanted to try. So this was done in Patons classic worsted wool. I think this color was jade, but don't quote me on that. And then just your basic white for the stitching. And so this week I added the toggle. I wasn't sure if I would do it this week because little sewing things like this are probably my least favorite finishing stuff to do. So, so I wasn't sure if I would actually get up the energy to get out the sewing basket and sew this on. But last night when I was sewing on the jingle bell on the bottom of the Santa stocking, I had some extra thread, so I just thought, okay, I will sew this on. And so I really like how this turned out. I mean, it's a little like wonky looking, but I like it. It looks homemade. So it's a basic rectangle that you felt down and then fold over, and it's sewed with it's sewn with blanket stitch, I believe, which I've never done blanket stitch before, so that's partly why I picked this. Plus I like the look of the blanket stitch around it. And then there's some chain stitch embroidery here for the swirly things. And then I finally added the toggle. So it's just a simple thing, but it had some techniques I wanted to try. And I hadn't done any felting in a while, so I wanted to do a little more felting. So I'm happy with how it turned out. Next, I know I showed this last week too. It was mostly finished. This is before I move on, I forgot to mention for the Santa stocking, one, I was not following a pattern because, like I said, it was a commission. It was like a family heirloom type stocking, and the girl sent me pictures of it, so I just made up the pattern based on the pictures, which is why it took me so long to figure out how to do the beard. And it's knit in just Red Heart Super Saver because that's what the originals were knit in. So I just knit it in that. So I forgot to mention that. And I can't really tell you what size needles I used because I forget. But it's whatever size is recommended for Red Heart. I just went with that on the yarn label. So yeah. Okay, now to my last FO again. Sorry I'm jumping around so much. Like I said, I'm a little bit rushed. So I know I showed this last week. This is my Filet Crochet Bookmark. I did use the pattern. It's on Ravelry, but I forgot to write it down, and there are so many Filet Crochet Bookmark patterns that when I went back to find it, I couldn't find it again. But it's this simple like X's and O's pattern with this nice little frilly border. So I finally sewed in the ends, and I blocked it, and now it looks pretty nice. It's a little bit big for a bookmark, honestly, but I do read some big books, so I think it'll work. I've never done filet crochet before, so I just wanted to try a new technique, and bookmarks are a really great way to do that. When I wanted to try double knitting for the first time, I knit those double knit Hogwarts Houses book scarves. So I like trying out new techniques on bookmarks. So yeah, I'm happy with how this turned out, and it's done in size 10 crochet thread, just like Aunt Lydia's. This dark green color, I don't know what the colorway is, but it's a dark green color. And I forget what hook I used because that was listed in the pattern and I can't find the pattern anymore. But that's done. And that's exciting. So those are my FOs this week. It's not a lot, but I did make a lot of progress on some whips too. So, sorry, my couch. Mary put the cushions all out of whack. So there's like this hole in the back of the couch now that I was falling into. All right. So I did make a lot of progress on my whips. So I will get to those now. So first off is my baby's breath scarf. And I think last time when I showed you the scarf, I had this section done for sure. And then I think I had about these 2 bobbles done. And now I have, oh, maybe I only had this 1 bobble done and started this other one. I did like 3 bobbles this week. I was, in my goals section for last week, I said that I was going to try and finish this by doing one of these bobble sections every week until I get it done. But I ended up doing like 3 of them this week because I went to, I haven't seen my friends in a while because we've moved and everything, but one of my college friends is in the same area that we moved to. And so we've been trying to reconnect lately, and she invited me to a party at her house to watch one of our favorite things to watch together. All of my college friends and I were super fans of Harry Potter, but we also really, really love a Harry Potter musical. It's on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's wonderful. It's a Harry Potter parody musical, and it's just great. So, yeah, I went over to her house to watch that, so I had a lot of time. And I took this because it's a pretty small project. It could fit easily in my purse, and I got a ton of knitting done. So I'm super excited about that, and I'm hoping to get more knitting done on it this week. Hopefully, I might be able to, if I make as much progress as I did this week, I might be able to finish it, and that would be awesome. Sorry, I paused for a second because my husband came back from his run, so he just had to talk to me about a couple things. So I believe I was still talking about the baby's breath scarf. I don't know if I even said all of the information about this. This is the baby's breath scarf. The pattern is by Yumiko Alexander from the book Rustic Modern Knits. And I'm knitting this out of Drops lace, 70% alpaca, 30% silk, on 3.5 millimeter needles, I believe. Suddenly I feel like that's not right. 3.75 millimeter, actually. And I have, like I was saying, I knit several bubbles this week. I have like 2 bubbles to go. And then if it's not long enough, I might knit. I went down a needle size because I was worried about running out of yarn, but I still have a whole other ball of yarn. So if it's not long enough, I might just knit more of these bobbles, more repeats, because it doesn't really change the pattern that much. And so it's got this lovely, I don't know if you can see, this lovely like Noop stitch lace pattern on one end of it. And then there goes my show notes. It's got this daisy chain pattern between each of the bobbles. So I really like how it's turning out. Light and airy and so soft. But yeah, so hopefully I will have more of this done next week. But I got a lot done, more than I was expecting to this week. So, next up, this was another setback one. I know I showed you last week my Luna Poppy cardigan, and I was hoping to have the body done, which I do, but it's actually not, I had to do a lot more work than what it looks like, because I was starting to run out of yarn because I was making one of the larger sizes for like a toddler sized one, and because I was knitting the larger size because I thought I had to in order to do the A-line style, because I really wanted to try the A-line out, but it turns out that I didn't need to do the larger size, and because I was running out of yarn, I decided to frog it and start over on the smallest size. So this week I frogged that whole big sweater that I'd been working on. That was a little bit painful, and I knit almost the entire small size. So I've got the cast off done now with the ribbing, and then I just started on one of the sleeves. I'm not sure how long I want to make the sleeves yet, but I only have about this much yarn left. It's a mess, I know. The middle of these baby yarn things always end up just looking like a tangled mess, but it's actually not tangled, it just looks all loopy. But I'm not sure how long I want to make the sleeves yet, so this week I'm going to try and finish off the sleeves and do the button band on the front, and I probably won't get the buttons on before next week because, like I said, the little sewing details are some of my least favorite things. So it'll take me a while to get up the energy to put buttons on this, but I'm hoping to at least have all the knitting done on this by next week. And this pattern, I don't know if I said, is by Jay Weilman on from Distant Hills on Ravelry. And this is knit out of Bernat Baby Softy in this pretty like seafoam green color on 4mm needles. And yeah, so I think that's it for this. So I'm really happy with the progress I made on this because I knit this whole thing this week. So I'm excited to finish this off then. Next up is another project that I made small but significant progress on, but now I'm stuck. So I don't know if there will be progress on this week, this week, or if I'm gonna give it a break and come back to it after a little bit of breathing time. And this is my Vincent cuff by Megan Wood on Ravelry. And it's a beaded version of Van Gogh's Starry Night. I don't know if you can see this very well. Yeah, so it's a beaded version of Starry Night. And this is knit with size 10 crochet thread on these really tiny needles. I think they're 1.25 millimeters. And it uses these little seed beads for the beading portion. And I got a lot of progress done on this because I think last week I was somewhere like here. And so to knit that much this week is actually a lot of progress because this is very like finicky knitting. You have to follow this chart and yeah, and the beading, it's very tiny and it hurts my hands, and so this is a lot of progress for me. But then I was gonna knit more this week, but I ran into some errors in the stringing of, there we go, in the stringing of the beads on this. So I need to take a little break to figure out what I'm gonna do about that because I didn't string them in the right order. And this is just all pre-strung. So I gotta figure out how I plan to fix that. But I did get a lot of progress on it so far this week, so I'm happy about that at least. I'm just hoping I don't have to frog it and restring all the beads, because that would be awful. So that's that. Next up, oh, this one is a happy thing. I showed this to you last week, and I was almost done with all of the edging. This is my thread and beads scarf, infinity scarf. It's on the, I've been getting this wrong, it's on the Hello Speckless blog. And there are still a bunch of ends needed to be woven in, but I got it, I got the edging finished, and I blocked it. It's a little bit floppy right now still because it's made out of thread, so it's not, it doesn't hold its shape very well. But I blocked it, and so I just need to sew in the ends, and then this week I got my beads for it as well, because in these little holes here, there's going to be beads strung in there. So I got some different beads that I'm going to arrange together somehow. So I got these lovely, like, speckly blue, purple, white beads. I figure they'll go nicely with these 2 shades of blue beads. And then I will use, like, some beads from my stash, some clear beads and some seed beads to fill in the spaces. But I haven't done this yet because I need to have a time where I can lay out and arrange all the beads in the order I want them, without the kitten attacking them and sprawling them all over the place. But I got the beads for them, so I'm hoping sometime this week I'll be able to get the beads onto the scarf. That would be great. But I'm really happy that I finally got this finished, because I remember working on this in May at my sister-in-law's college graduation. So I've had this in progress for a while. So I'm glad that I've finally taken finishing steps on it. And that is crocheted. I'm sorry, that's crochet. That's crocheted out of size 10 crochet thread. I got confused last week because my notes said I used a 5mm needle, or hook, I'm sorry. I'm such a knitter now. My notes said I used a 5mm hook on it, but I was like, that's definitely not the size I'm using. But I realized why it said that, because for this body section, the way that it looks a bit lacy is, the designer accomplished that by using a 5mm needle and doing just double crochet. So it makes it look a lot, it's like using big needles with a tiny yarn. It just makes it look a lot more open with minimal effort. So the 5mm hook was used for that, and then it uses a smaller hook for the edging, and I can't remember what size that was anymore. I'm really trying to get better at telling you this sort of information, but sometimes I have a hard time tracking it. So, but I'm really happy with how that's turning out so far. Next, I won't show this to you every week, but I actually made some progress on my temperature blanket. This is just 1 row a day in a temperature decided by a range that my husband and I came up with, because he's a weather nerd. So I believe last time I showed this to you, I was still down in this little orange band right here. So I crocheted all the rest of August, and I had crocheted a week's worth, this much of September, before I realized that I forgot to put in the black row to divide the months. So I had to frog it back to the end of August and put the black row in, and I still managed to get a whole week done of September. So I still have a lot to go because it's almost October and I'm still in the first week of September. But I made a lot of progress on it this week. I made like from here all the way up. So I'm happy that I'm catching up with this. And now it's starting to get a little colder, so I can actually stand to crochet a row every day, having this big, huge, heavy blanket in my lap. So this blanket is huge. So I won't show this to you every week, only I might show it next week if I make a lot of progress in catching up, but once I catch up, I won't show it every week because that could get boring. So yeah, and that is just, it's not using a pattern. We just saw an idea on Pinterest or Facebook or something, and it's using red heart because I needed lots of yarn for really cheap and in bright colors. I'm crocheting it with an eye hook, and I think that's all of the information I have on that. So now my last whip, I didn't actually work on this week, but it consumed a lot of my thoughts, and so I'm going to include it anyway. It's my turban twist hat by Bernat Design Studios, knit on 5mm needles using Patons classic wool that I hand dyed using Easter egg tablets. And like I said last week, the sewing went poorly because it turned out more like a boat than a hat. And so I've been spending a lot of time this week trying to figure out how I'm gonna rip the sewing out and re-sew it to make it look better. So I'm really hoping to work on this week. But I haven't really done anything on it so far. So yeah, that's my last whip. And then, except for spinning whips. Sorry for the crinkling, I forgot to pull this out. I've been spinning a bit more of my lovely Gotland wool here. I still have a ton left, but I really want to, this kind of goes into goals a little bit, but I really want to work on spinning a larger amount of this week because I'm really itching to start some new spinning projects, and I only have 2 drop spindles right now, and the other one is occupied with the C-cell fiber that's driving me nuts. So I'm not gonna spin that off anytime soon. But yeah, so I'm hoping that I can make some significant progress in spinning some of this lovely rope of Gotland wool, so that I can hopefully be a little bit closer to starting a new spinning project. But this wool is just a dream to spin. It's a little bit scratchy, so it's not the best wool for certain projects, but it spins so nicely. So I'm hoping to spin a bit more of that this week. I spun a little bit, tiny, teeny little bit this week. So I believe that's all of my whips. Sorry for the crinkling. I don't have any acquisitions this week, except I didn't even keep it down here. I got 1 ball of white red heart because I ran out when I was doing this beard. So that was my only acquisition per se. But that's because I've been mostly just working on projects that I've already got going. As far as podcasts, I've mostly been binge watching back episodes of The Knitting Expat, and also keeping up with her. I've been keeping up with her new episodes as they come out. Super excited to see all of the things she's knitting for her baby. And yeah, so, and I've also been eagerly awaiting the next episode of the Hey Sister podcast, and they finally released it, so I ate that up really quickly. As soon as I saw it was up, I watched the whole thing, and now I'm waiting for the next one. I also started watching this week the Inside Number 23 podcast. I've heard lots of good things about that one, and so I watched my first clip of it this week, and I will definitely be watching more. And then I'm also still working my way through the Hugh Loco podcast, and I think that's about all I've watched podcast-wise. I've mostly been watching lots of Knitting Expat. Not that that's a bad thing. I love her podcast. It's great. And it's so interesting to hear Mina talk about life in Bahrain. So that's my podcast section, what I'm watching. So I just have my goals section. So I just want to set a few goals for this week so that you, the viewers, can try and help me stick to them. So I've already said these a little bit, but goal number 1 is to cast off this Luna Poppy cardigan, which seems very doable. Goal number 2, this might be a little ambitious. I didn't realize I said this, but I said I wanted to finish this baby's breath scarf. I would settle for at least finishing the baubles that are called for in the pattern, and then if I decide I want to do more baubles, I will save that for next week. But I want to at least finish the last 2 baubles that I'm supposed to do. I'm hoping that I can at least rip out the sewing on this turban hat so that I can attempt to re-sew it together next week maybe. I figure split it up, rip out the sewing this week, and then take a break from it, and then sew it together another week. Like I said, I want to add beads to my thread and bead scarf. I want to keep catching up on my temperature blanket here. I don't expect to get the whole way through September, but I'm hoping to at least get another week or 2 done. And then this falls under whips that I didn't work on this week, but I want to. I want to at least finish another lace repeat or 2 of my Wispy Willow cardigan. This is by Cheryl Beckrich from the Love of Knitting magazine, Summer 2014 issue. And this is knit out of Wool-like loops and thread Wool-like sock yarn, 100% acrylic on 3.75 millimeter needles. And I've been stuck on this body for a long time now, so I want to split it up by doing like 1 or 2 lace repeats a week, and I think that'll help me get work on it done a bit better. And then I'm also hoping, I said I would do this last week, but just hasn't worked out. I'm hoping that I can get to the heel section of this bohus style knee-high. The pattern's by Chrissy Gardner from the Color Style book, and this is also knit out of Wool-like on 2.25 millimeter needles, GPNs cuff down, obviously. And so it's got this nice bohus, so hard to get a good light on this nice bohus cuff, and then it's just ribbing all the way down, but it's a knee high, so it's really long and it tapers a lot. It does stretch a lot, but it just looks really funky on the needles. But I'm hoping to get to the point where I would start the heel, and then I'll do the heel next week. I'm just getting so bogged down by like the repetitiveness of ribbing. So I'm hoping that I can knock out the rest of the legs so I can start on the heel next week. And then my last goal is, as I said, to spin more of this Gotland, so that I can start a new spinning project soon. So with that, I think that's everything I have for this week, so I will see you next week. Hi, sorry, I forgot to mention one thing. This week I've been working a lot on updating all of my projects on Ravelry, so if you want to see some of the stuff I've been working on the past few years, go and check it out. I've got most of the, sorry, I'm holding the phone now. I've got most of the projects up on Ravelry now. I just have to do some of the earliest stuff, which is the hardest stuff to get all the information for. So, but you can go and check out the pictures on there. Thanks. Bye.